is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today we're talking with Erica Escalante, owner of the Arrow in Portland, Oregon. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I'm your host for the show, and this is a Founder Friday show. So happy Founder Friday to you. It is Founder Friday for June, and I'm excited to be presenting a conversation with someone who is just a truly inspirational human being and a wonderful person to emulate the work ethic and dedication in their coffee shop, and that is Erica Escalante, who's the founder of the Arrow Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, and in Damascus, Oregon. So much heartfelt content in this conversation. You're in for a treat for sure. Now, I would love to talk to you about our wonderful sponsors here at Keys to the Shop. Before we get started, let's start with Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee, of course, is a specialty coffee equipment supplier. You know, they're based here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I'm based. And since they started their company, they've set out to make the best coffee brewing equipment available to the general public and to professionals alike. So their focus in this is on curating the best equipment for every need that you could have. So that goes from grinders to espresso machines, under-counter refrigeration, hot water towers, knock boxes, tampers, whatever it is that you're looking for, you can find it at Prima Coffee. If you're looking to upgrade your equipment in your coffee shop, or you're going to start a coffee shop and you need recommendations and the right gear to get you started, you're definitely going to want to check out Prima Coffee. They put a big emphasis on having the expertise to help their customers get the right gear to fit every situation. So definitely go check out prima-coffee.com. Again, that's prima-coffee.com, and see what they can do for you in your coffee shop and in your coffee journey. I know you won't be disappointed, and my thanks to Prima for their support of Keys to the Shop. I would also like to thank our sponsor here at Keys to the Shop, Pacific Foods. They're the ones behind the Pacific Barista Series line of non-dairy performance beverages, which are designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand. Whether it's almond, soy, coconut, rice, or oat milk, its ability to take the heat of steaming and produce an unmatched silky texture and keep the flavor balance focused on coffee makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Pacific is a huge supporter of the specialty coffee industry, and they demonstrate this by listening to and serving the needs of real specialty coffee professionals. So go to pacificfoods.com and learn more about how the Barista Series line of non-dairy performance beverages can help elevate those non-dairy options in your cafe. You're going to be glad that you did, and my thanks to Pacific for their support of Keys to the Shop. So today we are going to be talking with the founder and owner of the Arrow in Portland and Damascus, Oregon, Erica Escalante. The Arrow Coffeehouse is 5 years old. Erica has just gone through a ton of great and challenging experiences in the process. But we get to talk all about these in our conversation. And this conversation with Erica proves to me that her type of leadership and her type of dedication to the success of the people that work for her and to the industry at large, this example that she sets is the type of example that we need to be learning from. One of the most vulnerable conversations that we've had on the show in a while on Founder Friday, and you can really get a sense for the passion that drives Erica. And of course, I don't think you can leave here having listened to the story of going from barista to owner to expanding her store and all the details in between without being profoundly affected and motivated to just do better and to be more dedicated to your employees and to the success of those around you. So I'm excited to present this conversation to you. I've really wanted to have Erica on the show for a while. I know she's been a listener of the show, and I'm really thankful for that. So it's with great pride and honor that I get to present to you this conversation with the owner of the Arrow Coffeehouse, Erica Escalante. Erica, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Being aware of all of your work at the Arrow and all you've been able to accomplish, and your reputation precedes you. And I can't wait to dive in to all of this. You have, what now, 2 stores and a kitchen?
Yeah. We have 2 locations, and my Portland location doubles as a commissary kitchen. So we rent out that space as a separate business called Kitchenhood, and we rent out the kitchen to multiple small businesses throughout the week who maybe can't afford their own space or like don't need that much time. And so, that's what I do.
To put it mildly, it takes a lot of work to do all you do.
Yeah, a lot of work. I like being busy, so that works out.
I'm wondering, now that you're just in it and just steeped in the business of coffee and living the life, where did you first start your career in coffee? Where did you first catch that bug?
Yeah, so I always joke when I started my career was actually because I was kind of a loser in school, and I didn't have any friends. And so I would walk down to Starbucks every single day because they were always happy to see me, and they always asked me how my day was, and they always wanted to talk. And so as soon as I became of age, I applied to work there so that I could be a part of that kind of atmosphere and team all the time. And so I worked actually for Starbucks for a few years actually. And I loved it. I think in that kind of corporate atmosphere, I thrived a lot. I was very good at my job. I learned how to be very fast, and I'm very friendly already. So I really thrived, and that's kind of how I got started.
Nice. And so it sounds like your first experience with their friendliness really helped motivate you to make friendliness and, good customer service a cornerstone of the way that you did it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, it was really just this idea of, I'm just a customer, but I felt like I had friends. And, once I started working there also, I felt like I was making connections and making friendships with customers and even just my coworkers. It was just a really fun team atmosphere, where I could belong and do something that I like to do.
Nice. And so you eventually decided somewhere along the line to sort of stay in coffee. Like, was that just one day you woke up and said, "Nope, that's what I'm going to do for the foreseeable future"?
Yeah. I loved working for Starbucks. I really thought I was going to stay in that atmosphere like forever. I was going to just work up the chain and work for that company. But I unexpectedly moved up to Oregon. I'm from Southern California originally, and I moved up to Oregon and decided to explore downtown Portland and walked into this place called Stumptown Coffee.
I've heard of that.
And yeah, it's a pretty well-known place. But I walked into the cafe and I tried to order a caramel macchiato or something. They didn't have it. So so I ordered a mocha, the next thing that I recognized. And the barista, the unfriendly kind of hipster barista, gave me this mocha with this like picture in it. I was blown away. Like, why didn't anybody tell me about that? Like, what is this? Like, what is on this coffee? And so I went back to Starbucks and I was telling all my coworkers, and they're like, "Oh, that's latte art, and like we're not allowed to do it here." And I was like, what? Like, it's the coolest thing. Like, why aren't we doing this? And so from then on, I just wasn't satisfied in a corporate coffee atmosphere. And so I found a little shop just outside of Portland in a town called Damascus. where I could get a job and actually work on developing my latte art.
Nice.
And like, that's just what I wanted to do. I thought it was the coolest, most amazing thing that not only you could be friends with your customers and be around people all day, but you also could make cool drawings in a coffee. Like, what? That sounds like a great job.
I love it. It's such a story that we hear a lot with baristas. Like, latte art is the gateway to our careers.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't even know how to learn. I just kept trying for years. Oh man, so long. It took me so long to figure out how to do it.
And eventually got good at it, I imagine.
Yeah, I actually did. One of the high points in my career was actually, I think, the beginning of this year, where that Stumptown location had a throwdown, and I actually won the throwdown. That was my first throwdown win ever.
Wow.
I won it at that Stumptown location. It was like the sky opened up.
No kidding. That you could just quit right there.
Yeah, pretty much. I was ready to go. I also won a grinder for my house, which, like, I'm super cheap, so I don't have nice things at my house, but I have a good grinder now because of that throwdown.
That's funny. Save it for the shop.
Yeah, I give everything to the coffee shop. So you own your own shop now. That happened, and well, how did that happen? Like, what was the deciding factor where you're in specialty, you're learning about specialty coffee now, you're aware enough of what you want to do, where now you've decided, I'm going to open a store. How did this transpire? Yeah, so the little shop I ended up getting a job at was this like super funky Hawaiian themed shop called Hawaiian Beans, and my bosses actually paid for me to go to Coffee Fest in Seattle in 2010. So I was, I don't know, 19 years old, and that it blew me away. Like, I had no idea. Okay, I love latte art, but I had no idea what was actually in this world and in this industry. And my mind exploded, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to open my own shop. And so I went to a class at Coffee Fest called like How to Open Your Own Coffee Shop. And I sat down in the chair, and this man started saying, okay, you need 50,000 for this, 20,000 for this, 30,000 for this, 20,000 for this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to need $150,000 to open a shop. And I just don't have, I'm 19 years old. I'm never going to have that. And so I actually, a few months after that, I actually left coffee to actually try to make some money. Like, I'm like, okay, maybe if I save up by the time I'm 40, I'll be able to open my own coffee shop. And so, my boyfriend at the time and I, now my husband, we started another business. We started doing like windshield repairs on cars because we had a friend who showed us the ropes, and we opened up our own business. And then I started like a nanny business, and I'm like, we're going to save up all our money, and then when we're 40, we're going to own a coffee shop. And so, little did I know that the shop I had worked for previously, the owners a few years later were ready to leave the business. They were ready to get out, and they had done it for 9 or 10 years at that point. And so I had reconnected with them after 2 years, and they were just saying like, we're really ready to pass this on. We wanted to go to someone we know and love. And so we're just waiting for the right opportunity. And then my ears were like, huh? Really? Okay.
You don't say.
Okay. Yeah. So then I sat down with them and I said, well, what would that offer look like? And I started just messing with this idea like, oh, maybe I could own a coffee shop now. And they were extremely generous and kind. It's definitely like heart work for them. And, it's in a country town of, I think maybe 10,000, but it's spread across a wide area. So it's like one of the only shopping centers in the entire town. And they had just struggled with that location of getting just getting enough business to make it thrive. And so, after getting all the details, it was kind of a risk for me to take it on because financially it was actually a terrible idea to get into it. But, I was 21 and I knew everything like 21-year-olds do. Mm-hmm. And so I told my then husband, we had just gotten married a couple months prior, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy this coffee shop. And he said, okay, if you want to do that, let's go. And
Nice.
so we made the deal. And right after my 22nd birthday, we opened Arrow #1.
Wow. That's quite a story. I mean,
It is.
you went through that period of thinking you're just going to wait for 20 years to open a coffee shop. You went and did the due diligence, and you were prepared to do that. That's amazing. And then things opened up, and then here you are.
Yeah, I know. I was like, man, I love this job, but I just can't make minimum wage forever.
No kidding.
I had never gotten a raise. So I was like, I need to make money somewhere else, and then maybe I can pursue this another time.
So the Arrow, you kind of redid the cafe, I imagine, and named it something different. What's behind the name, and how did you go about just bringing that vision together?
Yeah, sure. So, it was very, very Hawaiian. Lots of like beach things, and like I actually I thought it was so cool. Like I hadn't really gotten to know hipsterdom in Portland yet, and so I thought like, wow, these people have their own flair, and it's so fun in here and colorful. And then it was my turn to kind of take over the vision, and so being super rustic was super in then. And so I was like, I'm going to go rustic. And so we redid the shop with the little money that we actually had. And we barely had any money at all. And so, we even brought in our own furniture from our house, our apartment. We were like, well, this is the only stuff that we have. So we brought it all in and lived in an empty apartment for a while.
Nice.
But so the timeline is just all crazy. I just always say that like my story is so just bizarre and amazing all at the same time. But we had gotten married, and 2 months later, my father-in-law actually passed away unexpectedly. And it was just really devastating to us. And he was just kind of like our person, and we loved him so much. It was just a huge blow. And so but a month after that is when I had the offer to buy the shop. So it was like so quick, like just a crazy amount of things happening all at once. And he was part of an organization called the Order of the Arrow, which is like an honor society for the Boy Scout Association. And he just had a really beautiful ceremony at his funeral that had to do with arrows. And so when it came to naming the shop, the only thing I could think of was something about an arrow, but I couldn't. It was a lot of pressure to name a shop, almost like the same pressure of naming a human being, like your child. It's like, sure. This is so final. And so I told our graphic designer at the time, I said, I don't know what it's going to be called, but can you get started? It's going to have something to do with arrows. And she came back with proofs, and it just said the Arrow on it. And I was like, hey, that works actually. So we'll just keep that. And so that's kind of that vision and that name.
Nice. Wow. So sorry to hear about that. And it's such a fitting tribute that, this place that gives life to you and your family kind of does the same thing that he did for you. And it's a really great story. And the vision behind that, like the shop and how it operates, what did you have as like the vision of, when people come into this store, this is what I want them to experience when they come into the Arrow?
Yeah, I think, at the time, I don't think I would have been able to put it in words because I was so just like, we just need to get open. And we actually have to like try to pay our bills. But looking back now, like I just always go back to that idea of belonging, and just like me as just a customer felt like I had a place where I was known and where I belong. And that's why I love this industry, and that's why I love cafes, and that's why I love customer service. And so, in the beginning, I'm like, I'm going to know every single customer. They're going to belong here. They're going to want to hang out here, and they're going to know me. And like, as I started building my team, I'm like, who can I see working besides, and all of us feeling like we belong here and working together. And so it was really just about like relationships and belonging, I think, is what was really important for Arrow.
I love it. So the time comes for you to, pull the paper off the window or whatever you you did to keep it secret or not to become the Arrow to sort of launch this new concept. How did this first go over? Did it get embraced right away? Did it take some time? Like what was that first period of time like where you were this new entity?
Yeah, man, it's such a whirlwind. You know, it was pretty exhausting and scary. And I think just kind of where the shop is located, we just have a lot of people who don't, they're not involved in what's trending, you know, they don't understand what a mocha is and what a latte is. They don't know the difference a lot of the time. They don't understand what the difference is between espresso and coffee. And luckily, I had the chance of working there for a while, and so I did know a lot of the regular customers already. But I think change is hard. You know, they have come to like familiarize with this place and how it runs and what it is and what the prices were. And then here comes me, a young person that's like wanting to redo everything. And so we had to front a lot of really negative, terrible comments that emotionally I was not prepared for. I wasn't prepared for people to be so blunt and rude.
Oh no, like
and,
what?
Like they would just come into the shop and be like, oh my God, this is ugly. Why would they ever do this? And
No.
I'm standing right there. They have no idea I'm the owner now. They just think I'm some young girl who like works the bar. You know, they have no idea that I'm the owner, and I spent my very last $20, like buying the last can of paint. Like they didn't realize who I was. Or I remember one time I was sitting in the back room and I could hear some of my regular customers talking about me, and they were saying the most awful things like, oh, she's so young and dumb. She has no idea what she's doing. She's going to ruin her life. And this is stupid for her to get into. Like, she's never going to make this work. And I just sat in the back room and cried. I was so upset. I just was not prepared for people's I think they just feel like when it's a business that they can say whatever they want, then they can make whatever criticisms they want because it's a business. But really everything in my businesses and in that business particular really reflected who I was. And I really had to just make it in my mind that I was going to be successful and I was going to prove them wrong, even though I was a young woman,
That is rough. I can't even, I'm sitting here thinking like, I can't even believe that it would come out of people's mouths within the business that is, I mean, I would be so
Yes.
scared to be overheard at all.
Yes, I know. I'm the same, but I love the town it's in. It's in this quaint small town, but I think most people who are from small towns and maybe don't live in a small town anymore look back and kind of realize that it's just its own kind of like social rules there. I've noticed that. I live in the city, and so even being out there, it's just a different kind of environment that you have to get used to, even where people kind of just say things that you're like, no, you're not supposed to say that.
Man, well,
And
I
so
guess it's better than Yelp, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
like, it's not permanent. It was just there.
Yeah, it's not permanent. And, I was able to change a lot of their minds. Because the funny thing is they'll say the most negative things, but keep coming back. Because there's nowhere else to go out there. I think there's maybe like 2 other food businesses in the area and no other coffee shops. Like there's really nowhere else to go. So I just kept with it and kept smiling and kept like, I'm going to prove them wrong and I'm going to make them love this place. And like most people did, they really did fall in love with the place and with myself. And my husband worked there a lot to help me at the beginning. And now my employees, it really worked itself out over time.
That's awesome. So yeah, it's a great thing to have overcome at that beginning stage. I feel like that would be something that knocks people off almost permanently. Maybe, someone with less constitution or work ethic might just say, no, it's not worth it. I don't want to be subject to this. But good on you for just making them. Love you.
Yeah, I'm kind of stubborn. I'm a stubborn person, and the thing is about opening a shop, it is just so much like work. Like it is, I mean, I don't know any other way than the way I did it, but I did it with like zero money, close to no experience, no investors, no backers, no guarantee, nothing. Like I didn't have any cash flow. Like I didn't even know what that was. I didn't have any kind of security, really, nothing, not even credit cards. Like we were 21 years old, 22, we didn't have anything. And so, for us, it was just like a daily, like today we're going to make as much money as we can. We're going to count the drawer and go to cash and carry and buy our supplies for the next day and hopefully have a little left over. I did the envelope system for the first year. Like, okay, we have to save $10 every day for our rent or whatever it was, at the time. Like,
oh yeah.
So I would take that money out of the drawer and put it in a special envelope just to make sure I had money for rent. And it was like that for like a year, because trying to get your cash flow up, it was like losing money wasn't an option. We had to make money. And so it was a huge struggle to get it going.
When was the moment where you started to feel more comfortable as the owner of this business? Because what you're describing sounds like, man, every day it could be better than the next, but it could be our last.
Yeah.
So when did that kind of shift into, this is working and we've got some wind in our sails?
Oh, good. That's a good question. I think maybe after the first year, I'm trying to think of the timeline now. You know what? Year 2, I think it really was. So like we finished the first year. My daughter was born on our 1-year anniversary. So we were also having a baby at that time. And so my daughter was born, and then once the next year hit, so like almost at the start of year 3, my husband had graduated college and he was ready to get his own career going. And I hired my first legit crew to like replace him. And it was just me, and I had my daughter like strapped to my back, and I hired my first like group of 3 people or 4 people. And I got them trained, and I was able to like back away a little bit. And for me, that was like, oh my gosh, like we're doing this. Like I don't have to be at the cafe at all hours. Like I can step away. Like it's okay. And that was amazing. It was such an amazing crew. I still have one of those employees with me now.
Oh,
and it was just such an amazing feeling to be able to have an actual crew and to be able to pay them and to have a little bit more freedom.
So that freedom that you had, being able to step away, gave you that sort of the relief, but also did it change the way that you made decisions? Could you make decisions more clearly? Was it easier to sort of see the business from that 30,000-foot level rather than being in the minutia every day?
Yeah, I wouldn't say 30,000, but close. It was that year actually I was able to go to Coffee Fest again because it was in Portland that year. And I had taken a class from the guy who owns Woods Coffee in Washington. And I sat in his class. His class was called Controllable Proportions, and it was about budgeting and accounting. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll take that class. And so, I sat in his class, and he started talking about the way that he budgets his business and the way that he keeps costs under control. And again, my mind was just blown. Like I have done so much work in just trying to afford all the costs instead of really focusing on controlling them and really targeting what was a waste of money and where the cost should be. And so the way that he taught how he accounts for payroll, labor, and all these different things, it was amazing to me. And I started looking at the finances in a little bit different light. I can't say that all of a sudden we could afford everything and we had a lot of money. Like that definitely didn't happen. But I think even just the ease of looking at the big picture of the budget and accounting was able, I think, for me to add some more freedom and separation of when you're looking at the books. Like, I had been so used to counting every dollar every day. It just was very short-sighted. And I probably needed to do that to survive up until that point where I could start taking a step back and looking at the finances in a bigger and broader view.
Nice. So each step along the journey just gives you this bigger perspective on your business, and it creates more freedom for you to make these decisions and make a more solid, like, single coffee shop, where at a certain point you decided to open another one where you felt comfortable enough with the first one where, I should have two of these now. How did that come about, and what kind of tipped you off, like, let's expand, let's do this?
Yeah. Well, I would say, it actually came with a little bit of realistic heartbreak, maybe a little bit, but more of just, so we actually live in the Portland area. And so we were commuting out to Damascus every day. And, we had talked about possibly moving out there, but just didn't really feel like that's where we wanted to live. And at the same time, I had some growth projections of what I wanted to see from the Damascus location and what I was hoping it would bring out. And we were absolutely heading into that direction for the first 3 years. But after that, actually something like really crazy happened. The occupants of Damascus decided to vote to disincorporate the city, which means like they wanted to just be county land. They didn't want to have a city hall. They didn't want to have a local government. And there was a lot of just drama involved in that. But the vote came very fast and very quickly, and we were just not expecting that to happen. And unfortunately, our very, very next door neighbor, and where we generated most of our business from, was City Hall. So we were literally the neighbor of City Hall, where they had over 24 employees, and they held City Hall meetings. They had traffic court there. They had all these different avenues for us to get business. They were brewing our coffee. They were buying our pastries for their meetings, and so there was this huge hub of why we were so busy was closed within 3 months of that vote. It was all gone.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden the vote was on the ballot. People voted on it the next month, or the next 2 months. They voted on it. It cleared. And within 3 months of that, City Hall was gone. And so we lost at that time 20% of our gross sales, which was really rough, really rough. And so, for me, it was I'm either going to possibly ride this out and close this shop down, and that will be the end of Arrow, or I'm going to take what I have right now, the money that I have, and I'm going to invest in a new location that's going to generate a lot of business, and it's going to be bigger and will carry Arrow over into whatever happens next. And so I was just kind of looking for that opportunity. I looked at nearby locations to possibly just move Arrow number one, but the only surrounding areas that we have in Damascus is huge shopping centers and suburban towns that the rent is crazy high. You have to be a corporation to be in there. They don't even let small businesses in unless you have $100,000 in the bank, they don't let you into those giant shopping centers. And so, I was looking on Facebook, just kind of keeping my eye out. And I saw that this mutual friend had posted hey, I'm looking for a commercial kitchen for my business. Does anyone want to go in and share this commercial kitchen with me, with their business, and we can split the cost? And so I had a moment there. I was like, oh, okay. So I messaged her and I said, hey, I'm looking for another location for my cafe. What if you took over the kitchen, but I had a cafe at the front, and then we shared? And so she was totally on board. She's like, yes. So we started looking for locations, but she wanted her kitchen in the inner Portland core. That she didn't want it on the outskirts. She wanted inner Portland. And so that was kind of scary and intimidating for me, to be in the heart of the coffee city of the US, where a lot of cool things are happening. But we ended up finding a place and it working out.
And this is the commissary kitchen along with the location.
Yeah. So her and I got together and after seeing Portland is kind of booming right now, the rent is really, really high. And we're like, well, we're going to have to find quite a few more people to make this affordable and work. And so we created our business Kitchenhood together. And so we have sometimes over a dozen businesses renting out our kitchen during the week. And so we kind of run this side project so that we're both able to run our businesses out of the same location.
Man, so you've got this now, and this is providing a supplement to what you had lost. Two questions, I guess. Were you eventually able to, make up for, at the Damascus location, that loss in Damascus? And how did the transition to owning two businesses, how did that go? Because that's you're going from one to two is no small feat.
Yeah. So first off, no, we have actually never been able to jump back from the loss in Damascus. And that has been a really hard pill to swallow, how, you get to a point where you're like, how much more can I invest in a location for it to actually become how much more, we've done a lot of remodeling there over the years. We received a special grant that enabled us to buy some equipment and so we've just keep pouring money into this place and it was going in the right direction. But then once it fell, it was like, how much more time and effort do you spend? But I will say that the crew there, the employees there have been incredible. They're the most amazing people and they live in Damascus and they're extremely invested in that location, for themselves. I know my manager, she's an amazing mom. She lives really close to the shop and she's like, man, I don't know what I would do if it wasn't here. Not that if I didn't work here, but I would be so sad if a coffee shop wasn't here. And so they definitely we prepared for a few months for Arrow 2 to open. And so they have pretty much been very independent in running the store. And so we each have our roles and we each have been learning and growing to make sure our roles complement each other in running that location and that store. But for a shop that's not doing well, it still has a lease. You can't really get out of the lease unless you want to lose even more money. And so it comes into a conversation of does it lose more by staying open or lose more by trying to exit out a very expensive lease? And so for us, it's actually doing well enough where it can afford the lease. It's not losing money and the employees are really awesome. And so we keep going and have to have that conversation when the lease is coming up. It's a hard conversation to have, but we have to make some decisions and think about it. I don't even know what direction I want to go in with that,
Right.
But as far as opening store 2 goes, I think it actually went really well. I think, again, my Damascus employees were so amazing in taking over their responsibilities and treating the store like it was their own. I had to learn some things about not over-promising what I can deliver. I talked just recently about, if I say I'm going to do something for a store or an employee, I actually need to follow through and do it. Whether that's buying milk, if they're we're out of milk, we need help, I'll be okay, I'll come tomorrow. And then I forget because I'm so overwhelmed and busy. And then that store's help me, I'm not I thought you were coming. And I'm oh my gosh, I forgot. I'm coming right now,
Right.
And so I really had to learn and still work on not over promising, having some systems in place, especially for inventory for 2 stores. That has been the hardest adjustment, is making sure that every store has what they need to work. And so I think so far, it's been amazing to see the team all work together and invest in something that has been really good. Opening store 2 wasn't oh, it's me wanting to expand my empire and make money. It was more hey, this is what's going to be best for the company in the long run. And so for the employees to come behind and be like, okay, we believe in that. And like, what can we do to help? Like that has been incredible.
Nice. Your team sounds amazing. And I want to know how you go about your hiring process to bring in people who are the lifeblood of any store. The staff make or break the experience that people have when they go into a coffee shop. So what kind of things do you look for when you're looking for people to hire? And what does that onboarding look like to kind of introduce them to the culture of the Arrow?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't necessarily know if I've nailed it down 100%. But I think both stores are a little different, the hiring process for both stores. The Portland store is extremely busy and has a ton of multitasking in a different way that store number one has. Number one has its own kind of multitasking and challenges. But I think number one, we definitely look for people who are willing to invest in the team and having good relationships. Like we believe relationship first always. And that's with the customers. Yeah. But that's also with the crew. And so I'm constantly telling them like all good relationships take work. Having a good relationship with your coworker, it takes work. And having a good relationship with your boss, it takes work also. And so we're looking for people who are willing to put in the work for us and not actually just for the company, but for themselves and for the health of their coworkers. I think what's really hard in a team is when you have someone who is incredibly afraid of conflict, maybe hides it inside for a long time and then maybe just one day quits out of the blue and doesn't actually confront things that need to be confronted on. I think that's pretty common in the customer service industry where your main job is to smile and please people all the time. And so finding people who are willing to have hard conversations with each other, is willing to contribute to a team, who's willing to give the benefit of the doubt, but also like speak when need be. Like those are the people that I'm like, once you have that down, I think you can get almost anything down after that.
Beautiful. No, that's so true that we keep so much inside. It's working in the service industry, and that's such a great skill to have for a team. You as a leader in your coffee shop have to exemplify these things and keep people accountable and develop those relationships and kind of coach people along. And everyone has their own style of doing this. I wonder if you could describe your approach to leadership and where does that philosophy of leadership come from? Why does it work for you and your business?
I think my philosophy for leadership is really just being myself and being real and being honest. I feel like because I do work the bar with my employees, I do work shifts, I am a part of the crew also, that maybe the model of our business might be a little different from most, just because when you're working with your boss every day on bar, the lines get a little blurred between friendship and coworker and boss. And so I think for myself, like upon hiring, I'm extremely clear and upfront about what to expect from the job and what to expect out of the relationship that they'll have with me in particular. Because you're working every day with this person, they become your friend and your coworker, but then they also have the final decision on a bunch of things that have to do with your job. So I'm not some owner that's like sitting in a desk somewhere or making decisions from afar, or that there's even a lot of tiers of structure. Like right now, even now with over a dozen people, like right now I'm the head manager of all of them. And so I think, I think mostly when I'm hiring and when I'm leading people, giving them extremely clear upfront expectations is really important, so that that they know it's a good fit for them also. Like you're not just a good fit for me, I'm going to be a good fit for you too. And so I think, even when it comes to like my personality and who I am as a person, like being upfront and clear about that, like, hey, you're going to be working with me every day and I'm an Enneagram number 8. So you should go read up on that and, and maybe come to terms with that, because if you're a person who's afraid of intensity, you are going to have a hard time here. And not to say that I'm this mean, angry person that throws stuff or nothing like that, but just even, some personality types, even just me looking at them, they just like, oh, and they like cower and like, and so I think just being upfront about I even am upfront about dysfunctions in the business and what that would look like and what some of our issues are. Like, I like to tell people about that upfront so that they can know, like, okay, I'm not expecting this most organized business owner to be my boss. Like, I wouldn't want them to get frustrated at their job because they had wrong expectations.
Right. So you're being pretty vulnerable with them by, being upfront about these things, and they're going to find out those things anyway. But it seems kind of brilliant that you're doing that upfront, because the staff will talk about the dysfunctions in secret if they're not talked about in public.
Yes. Yeah. Smart or maybe crazy. I'm not so sure what a lawyer would say exactly, but I think I think trust and transparency are kind of buzzwords going on in just business in general. And like, what does being like a trustworthy boss mean? And what does being a transparent boss mean? And all of that stuff. And for me, it's like, you know what? I am willing to get a little hurt in my relationships with my employees. I'm willing to become a little more vulnerable in a vulnerable position in order to create great relationships with them and to create a good environment where they belong. I can't preach about belonging and about relationships if I'm some, very far away, like very like businessy type person that never allows my guard down or my, then I'm expecting something out of the employees that I'm not also willing to show them. And so, liabilities aside for me, I'm like, I'm going to be real. I'm going to be myself. And if this employee ends up taking what I'm saying and like thinks gets the wrong idea or even like hurts me in the process, like I'm willing to go there and I'm willing to get hurt in order to create really solid relationships here. And I think that happens a lot to business owners, small business owners in general, is that we really, really love our employees. I'm not talking about every business owner because I think there's a lot of really terrible ones out there. But, for me, like, I love my employees. I love spending time with them and being around them. I hire people that I want to work with and that I love. And so it really is hard when they quit because you feel like you're getting broken up with. And especially if they quit because they're mad at you or they don't like what you do, then you feel like personally attacked and vulnerable. Like, oh my gosh, like I love them and they're rejecting me. And that is still hard, to this day. But I think after a few years, being way more upfront ahead of time and being clear and honest about the operations and everything that goes on, when they quit, then it's more of like, you know what, then that's okay because this wasn't the place for them. I was upfront on my end and I have an open door policy for them to come and talk with me, and they didn't want to put in the work. And so for the sake of the team and for the business, I need people who are willing to put in the work. And if that's not the kind of environment they want to work in, then I don't blame them. Like it does sound easier to just clock in and out, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just having a job. That's totally great. That's not really exactly what Arrow is. And so coming more to terms with peace about that part, I think was a lifesaver, because I wasn't getting heartbroken over every chance of turnover,
Yeah, so you would say so far that approach has been worth it, even though, working with and developing these relationships and, getting your heart broken a little bit. This is something that a lot of people try to avoid, I'm the boss, you're the employee, we're not going to have a relationship. You're just going to do what's expected of you, and we don't have to. I can make more clear and level-headed decisions if that chasm exists between us. But it sounds like what you're saying is like you can make better decisions and also practice what you preach by having these relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And I think every personality is different. Like I'm the kind of personality that thrives on people and relationships. And so like if you're an introvert, like my style would be hell for you, but the thing is that the employees that I have been able to connect with and have relationships with and have this support system, it just, for me and for them too, I know just creates such an unforgettable and life-changing and personal growth building work experience. I love employees who have left Arrow, and I see them go on in their lives and do so many amazing things that like I would be so sad if I hadn't had the chance to really know them and to really befriend them. And for me too, I think it provides an amazing opportunity for feedback in a way like, I know that when my employees tell me something that they see is wrong or needs changing, like I can see that it's coming from a place of love and care, not just for me, but for each other and for the business. And so you're creating an environment of love and care for each other. You're saying relationships first. And so when an employee says, hey, this isn't really working, this doesn't feel right, like I know it's not coming from a place of like, entitlement or like bitterness or anything like that. It's really coming from a place of love and care. And I really like hear them, I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And, it's hearing you describe it that way. It's very rare that kind of feedback is expressed in a cafe environment, because we have a lot of us subscribed to a model that creates an unfortunate and an unnecessary amount of distance between the staff and the leaders or the owners. So high five to you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that's really evident in all of this conversation is that you have an extraordinarily strong work ethic, something that I find very inspirational. And I wonder, where do you draw, these days, especially with all that's on your plate, where do you draw most of your energy and joy from?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I think I was raised in a very religious family that was very involved in volunteering all the time. And so I think I was raised in an environment of if you can do something good, you should do something good. And that was my whole childhood. We were always working at the food bank or volunteering or watching someone's kids or helping someone with their house or anything like that. That was my parents. They just were everything that belongs to you belongs to the community, and we just relied so heavily on people. And so that's why I love the cafe. It's why I love being an employer. It just brings such a sense of community. And I know that even when I'm having a hard day, the people that encourage me the most are oftentimes my employees. So much so, they are extremely encouraging. And, I just know that we're all doing good things together. Whenever we can do something good, we're going to do it, whether that's making a really amazing good latte or making good conversation or even just, talking about really good and deep things with each other that can make us better people. It just seems like there's so much room to do good in this industry, from meeting producers and seeing all that they do in their farms and in their communities, and then through the importer, the export, everyone, we're all striving to do really good. And that just, I love being a part of that. It just makes it it is the most beautiful thing about this work. Truly.
That's amazing. So as someone who has had a lot of ups and downs and is got this great example of relationships and work ethic, and from your success and from your experience, talk to the people out there who are wanting to open their own store, or operators even now who are going through some tough times and kind of figuring things out and questioning like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have got into this? Or
Oh.
what advice do you have to owner and operators?
Yeah, maybe a couple things. Number one is really remember like why you love this industry and what you wanted to do in this. Like for me, if it's wanting to do good things, like I'm going to find when I'm most discouraged, I'm like, okay, what can I find today to do really good in? And what can I find to do good for myself? Sometimes that means I just need to take a nap. Sometimes it means I need to ask one of my employees to cover my shift so I can have a day of rest. Even if I'm worried about the budget or anything else, like you have to really understand yourself and realize what you need so that you can take care of everything else. I think also, something that really gets me down is playing the comparison game. Because, you look at all these businesses on Instagram or even like my friends, I'm friends with the cafe owners in Portland. And sometimes I just look at their life from the outside and I'm like, they're so amazing. Look at how perfect their shop is. And like everything looks perfect. And look at, they got written up in that article in the magazine and I didn't, or they got voted best of something and I didn't. Even going to coffee events, being a young Latina woman, not really feeling like I belong and just being like, oh, what am I doing here? Like,
Yeah.
stop playing the comparison game because you do you, you don't know what's going on in their life and in their finances and in their shops. You just have to focus on what is driving you and what is your purpose and just keep doing good things. I get discouraged so much. I'll text a buddy, like a coffee shop owner buddy of mine, like, and be like, oh my God, what am I doing? I hate this. Like, I'm not very good. And like, he's just like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, stop comparing yourself. Like you are doing amazing. Like and so I think that goes into my third advice is like, I learned recently the word social capital and I never heard it before, but I had always preached about this idea of like the biggest investments that you can make in your business is investments into people. And it's a scary thing to do that because you don't always see a return. It's risky. It's a risky investment. But I can say that like the more I invest in people, like the more fulfilling this job is for me, the more that I feel surrounded by community and love. And even just, like my goal when I go to coffee events and throwdowns is like, how many people can I look in the eye and shake their hand and say, hello, how are you? Who are you? And just get to know all of these really amazing people that make up the industry and taking time to invest in people because that's what this job is about, and so like the more I invest in people, the bigger return that I'm seeing, even though there are really bad heartbreaks in that, like, again, being willing to be hurt because, the times where it does return, the time where people stick up for you or encourage you and, or even root for you for something, like it was worth all the time it took to know them and to invest in them.
Wow. Those are words to live by for sure.
I don't do perfect at it all the time, but I really try.
I mean, just having those three things as a focus in your life as a professional or otherwise, that will increase the quality of your life right there.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Like, I think the number one thing people say about my life is like, you're so busy. Like, how do you do it all? And like, oh my gosh, like you're young and you're doing all these things. And like, for me, I'm just like so happy. Like I have such a great community of people that are supporting me. And like, I don't have to do it all because of these people and because of the purpose and the mission that I feel and sharing that with others. And so like, I'm ready. I'm keeping going,
Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us. I mean, I feel really amazing just listening to this. I feel pretty happy to be in coffee. So thank you. Yeah. What is next for the Arrow? How can we stay in touch with what you're doing? Where can we find you online?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure what's next for Arrow. I kind of laugh because I have a business friend who's always asking me about my 5-year plan. I always laugh and say, I already did it. Like this was the 5-year plan, what I'm doing right now. But I think we have some hard decisions ahead of us about what to do with our Damascus store. And like, that's its own like vulnerable, heart-wrenching thing to really think about and to share and to maybe brainstorm and so that's coming up. We're wanting to like grow our family. We're wanting to take a step back from like working bar shifts all the time. Like I'm ready to stop doing that, and I'm ready to start focusing on bigger industry things. So for right now, I don't know what that looks like, whether it's like competing or lecturing or something. I don't know. I'm trying to find my space and place in this industry, and what that will look like for a young Latina business owner. And so I'm just kind of keeping my ears and eyes open. At Arrow, the first something I did to start initiating something was the first Thursday of every month, we have a women and queer only cupping, so that women and queer folks can come together and just be in a safe place to ask questions and to like learn how to slurp and to spit into a cup and like develop palates. And so that has been a really amazing thing to focus on and to do. And I want to do more things for the industry like that. But as far as keeping up with us, you can go to the Arrow PDX. That's our Instagram, the Arrow PDX, or the Arrow Damascus. It's kind of fun to go to both Instagrams and see just how diverse the two stores are. They're very, very different from each other. And then, and then my personal Instagram is Escalante_Erica, and you can follow me there and see all the things that I like to rant about, and you can see my family and all those sort of things.
Wow. Well, this has just been a great conversation. I'm super glad that we got to get on a call here and explore your story. And I know that no matter what you choose to do, and 5 years from now, whether you have a plan or not, it's evident that the industry is in good hands with you, and we're the better for having you in it. So thank you very much for just taking the time and talking with us today.
Oh, well, that's very kind. I appreciate all the encouragement in the world because it really matters. Words matter. And so, thank you for that encouragement.
So I think easily you can walk away from this conversation feeling an immense amount of respect and inspiration, learning about all of the hurdles, learning about the dedication put into this business, the grit and determination to keep the business going, even to expand in the face of the challenges that they were facing at the time. These are moves that are brave ones. They are ones that are born out of a dedication to an ideal, especially the idea of being vulnerable up front with people as they're brought on. As we were talking about communication and relationships within the organization, it really struck me how open she is with the staff about, here are my faults, here are my flaws, and here's the flaws of the business. And of course, these are things that get ironed out over time, but you cannot present this perfect image to somebody who will then discover, however long it takes them to discover it, maybe on the first day, that this is not the perfect organization that I heard about in the interview process where they painted an image only using the vision statement. This is kind of the anti-vision statement in a way, but it creates this realistic picture where if you're in it for something greater than just a perfect scenario, then you're in it for the right reasons, because life is gritty. Life goes up and it goes down, just like the story of the Arrow and their evolution as a company and Erica's evolution as an owner, learning about things as she goes and just putting in the effort and the time year after year to make this successful. This is the real image of what it's like to work within the guts of the operation to make a coffee shop run. And so, Erica, thank you so much for joining us on the show and presenting us a very honest look at what it's like to run a coffee shop and just inspiring us with your work ethic, your values, and your example. So thank you again, Erica. We look forward to seeing what's next for the Arrow. Now, if you want the show notes for this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com, where on the sidebar there will be a place for you to enter your email address. And when you do that, you're going to be signed up to receive the show notes for this episode in email format, along with news about Keys to the Shop podcast, as well as Keys to the Shop consulting and training. So that's real simple. I encourage you to do that. Also, if you want to reach out to me directly, you can do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. And I would love to hear from you. If you are going to Coffee Fest in LA, please do say hello. That's the 18th through the 21st. I will be presenting some lectures on management and coffee shop stuff in general. Go to coffeefest.com to learn more about that. But it would be awesome to meet you out there in California. So that's it for today's show. I hope that you enjoyed it and that this example was inspirational and helpful in your career journey in specialty coffee. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.